Okay, so this is something that needs to be said because it needs to be said. It's a wrong idea. Okay, listen up, you American burger munching, sweet tea sipping closet fascists that are trying to pass yourselves off as Marxists. This is particularly out there to you patriotic socialist, American patriotic socialist. Did you ever notice that while you're dick riding these truckers, and the very obvious fascist movement that it is, because you won't actually acknowledge all of the racist garbage that's coming out of the mouths of the people who founded the movement and are currently running it? You know, the whole thing about replacement theory, stuff like that. You know, the stuff that you won't acknowledge is actually happening because you're incredibly dishonest and you're a fascist enabler. Did you ever notice that for some reason, all of the Canadian Marxist organizations aren't supporting them, but for some reason, your condescending Yankee ass is? So you're telling us about our society and that we should support these fucking fascists because you have a perverse idea about patriotic socialism, which literally lands you on the same side as fascists. And, you know, kind of also explains why your leader, Caleb Maupin, you know, kind of keeps palling around with fascists, making friends with Dugin, pushing this whole Eurasian viewpoint, which is fascist, and you can tell because of what they're doing, because of what they're saying. You don't even understand the most fundamental premise of what's going on. We demand Trudeau shut down the vaccine mandates, stop the vaccine mandates. Vaccine mandates are provincial, not federal. You don't know that because you don't know anything about the Canadian healthcare system. You don't know anything about how our healthcare system works because you don't know anything about what's going on. Healthcare and health and safety issues, for the most part, are done on the provincial level, not the federal level. You'd know that if you'd know what you're talking about. This entire trucker movement is a petty bourgeois anti-liberal campaign backed by the Conservative Party. Oh, it's a grassroots workers' uprising. Is that why it's literally fucking funded by the Conservative Party? And instead of saying fuck mandates, it's fuck Trudeau? You don't think that maybe that's just a little bit suspicious that there's this hyper-focus on Trudeau and not the actual, like, system? Because a workers' revolt is when you deliberately target the Conservative Party, paid for by the Conservative Party. But then again, critical thinking really isn't an American trait. Okay. Basically, these aren't like actual regular truckers. These are people who own trucks and rent them out. Or people who own trucks and then pay other people to drive them. This is a petty bourgeois movement. A fact that you are blatantly ignoring because it goes against your hyper-patriotic bullshit where you are desperate to want to believe a narrative that isn't true. You want to believe this is a working because you don't have anything, because you don't want to admit how fucked up the first world is. You don't want to admit how fucking fucked up first world people actually are. And it's amazing how you can have this whole movement carrying around swastikas and Confederate flags. By the way, you're in fucking Canada. Why are you carrying a Confederate flag? You're not a fucking Confederate. You can't even make the bullshit argument, history, not hate. It's not even your history, idiot. All right. So it's a petty bourgeois movement. You know, it's like how some people can't tell the difference between a farmer and a farm hand, whereas the latter actually does the majority of the labor and is the worker. You know, owning a farm and then paying people pittance or migrants like next to nothing to work the land makes you an exploiter. Like how this, obviously you can't tell the difference between that because I'm an American farmer, salt of the earth, and is literally bourgeois. You know, you don't fucking know anything. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what this trucker thing is. There's a reason why no Canadian Marxist parties are backing it. Because it's not fucking working class. It's complete astroturf. And you think you know something that we don't? Bullshit. You're full of it. Now, we're pretty much used to stupid Americans patronizing us, treating us like we're idiots. Either way, fuck you. You think that you know our political system better than we do. Do you honestly believe that? You don't even know how your own political system works. But about 80-90% of everybody who claims to be left in the United States is really just a liberal or a closet fascist, isn't even actually a Marxist. So don't preach to us and that somehow you're smarter than us and like you know our political system better than we do. That's fucking moronic, and you're a fucking moron for doing so. Oh, and by the way, you don't even know jack shit about geopolitics either. You do this cherry picking, you do your own feel good Big Mac glazed donut narrative for the sake of confirming your manifest destiny bullshit, which is why you see these American patriotic socialists, shitting on indigenous sovereignty movements or the land back movement, which they claim was done by Jeff Bezos because Jeff Bezos was around in the 1700s or 1800s. Because you're a dishonest piece of shit that has to slander indigenous people in order to push your narrative of America the Great, America the Beautiful. If that's what you consider beautiful, then you're an ugly goddamn person. And still, even all this, which has basically nothing to do with the US, you still somehow make it about you. You still somehow find a way to make it about your Amerocentric, patriotic nonsense. Oh, this is the thing that we should be supporting because we're America and we're the leader and we tell other people how to do their revolutions. And I know one of you completely brain dead sacks of fucking potatoes is going to claim that that's what I do in the comment section. See, the problem is that I support third world revolutions. I don't tell them how to do them. Like what you're doing, because you're a piece of fucking fascist garbage. Now, could you take 5 minutes for some critical analysis, which you're not going to do because you don't have the integrity to do it, is the realization that Ottawa has been with the police, a lot of police have been standing with the protesters. Nothing says working class like being on the same side as the police. But then again, an awful lot of you seem to actually, now regular Marxists who are supporting this tend not to support the police. But you American patriotic socialists tend to dick ride the police sometimes. Now, would you notice that with all of these truckers, nobody's using the same tactics that you would use against, say, G20 protesters? Or the same kind of tactics that are used against indigenous activists trying to make sure that they have fucking water to be able to drink? Did you notice the huge difference there? That old color palette Family Guy meme, terrorist, not a terrorist kind of thing? Yeah, you conveniently forgot about that when it's convenient for you and your narcissistic position of believing in your own American superiority. Or rather, lack of critical thinking skills in this case. Imagine what would have happened if this Flew Trucks Klan thing were black people or indigenous people. I think you have a better idea of what would have happened to them, but you're going to ignore that because you're full of it. When the police are basically letting you get away with this, that should be a sign that something's just, maybe the system's just kind of a little bit maybe in favor of it, that they're not really bothered that much by it. And these trucking companies, by the way, if you actually claim to care about truckers, which you actually don't because you're full of it, and that's made manifest by the fact that you're supporting a bosses strike, basically. You support scummy bosses who commit wage theft and do union busting. These are the same people. I mean, it should have been obvious to you that when they were running around screaming about white replacement, harassing black employees of soup kitchens, stealing food from homeless people, which is totally proletarian, bro. That should have been your first clue. Again, rig owners or owner-operators, in this particular case, they're petty bourgeois. But then again, you don't ever say anything about the union busting that the companies do. But this is where you're going to finally say something. And by the way, since I know you're very, very, very big on using buzzwords like, do you want everybody to be poor? That's Malthusian. Because those are your buzzwords, because you don't have actual arguments for your incredibly intellectually dishonest positions. Letting a virulent disease rip through the entire working class population, which disproportionately affects the poor, is not only backwards as fuck, but it's literal eugenics by the definition of Malthusian. You're a fucking hypocrite on top of it. Think about that. And realize what a hypocrite and a piece of shit you actually are. Because these American patriotic socialists can't think for themselves. All they can do is tail movements. Oh, we better support what the working class supports or we're not going to be able to get anywhere. There's a reason why you can't get anywhere unless you tail a fascist movement, in which case you're not going to win. When it's a fascist movement, you're not going to get in them and change them. Okay, do you understand that? There's a reason why it's bash the fash, not suck up to the fash or tail the fash. It's called bash the fash. You don't get it. Because you're too busy dick-riding the American empire, and therefore anything that the masses do cannot be wrong, which is so fundamentally anti-dialectical and anti-scientific and anti-logic, it blows my mind. Just keep this one thing in mind. There is a reason why Canadian Marxist organizations who actually live in Canada, who actually are Canadian people, who actually know Canadian politics, basically all of us, all Canadian Marxists, I'm sure there's one completely idiotic shithead who's an exception to the rule somewhere, is supporting them. But every Canadian communist organization does not support them, and there is a fucking reason for why that is. Think about that before you shoot off your arrogant, condescending, fucking American-centric mouth again. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.